How did your high school crush turn out as an adult? He had a roller coaster of a life. I admire him more than ever, and more than most people I know, but can't wrap my head around why I ever found him physically attractive. Maybe it was always just his heart. By age 25, he had a PhD, a wife, and was a captain in the Navy. By 30, he had 2 PhDs, a small business where he made a metric ASS ton of money, and his wife was pregnant. By 31, he was diagnosed with stage 4 skin cancer that swiftly spread to his lymph nodes, bones, esophagus, and a few other places. He was told he had a minimal chance of making it 5 more years. Even with the best health insurance money could buy, it still basically wiped him out. 7 years later, he's living a comfortable but not extravagant life as a civilian contractor for the Navy, with the same wife and 2 happy, healthy kids, and spends most of his free time advocating for better public health care. I remember walking up to her and asking if we could talk in private, and she said you can say what you need in front of everyone. Her group of friends were all around. So I asked if she wanted to go on a date. She burst out laughing and said, no. It was rough, man. Looked her up last year. She's a cage fighter now. What? I guess she's always been a pro at hurting people for others' entertainment. I had 2 unrealized crushes in high school. One is a teacher and musician. She's married and has either 1 or 2 kids. We've kept in loose contact via social media and ran into each other at a NYE party shortly before she got married. I was introduced to her now husband as favorite ex ever. He seemed like a decent dude, and I'm happy for her. I believe the other became a US attorney. I have not heard from her since Google Plus almost became a social media thing. I imagine she's still very productive and would be disappointed in my life choices. My only girlfriend in high school was my crush. Her mom banned her from dating me after about a year because my girlfriend admitted to her mom that we were fooling around. This was about 20 years ago. She's still living with her mom, no kids, and as far as I know, never again dated seriously after her mom broke up. Still has the same job from high school too. It's like her mom went way into protective overdrive, and my former girlfriend never grew up. Mine was my best friend. She turned out to be a though. She always liked younger guys. Like when she was 17, she had a younger 13-year-old boyfriend, which was weird. But we were kids, and I didn't think much about it. Turns out she continued to like younger teens as she grew into her 20s and 30s. Found her on Tinder. She said I was hot, pointed out that I was that loser she used to know in high school. Had a big laugh. Been little over a year, now we send each other memes and hang out occasionally. She's still a hot, successful, and wealthy entrepreneur, and married someone with the same first name as me and who quit his job to brew beer. I crushed on her for a bit. Didn't think she was interested, so I dated others. Then came to find out she crushed on me senior year. I was too dumb and blind. We connected freshman year of college. She wrote me letters, and by the time I wised up, she had moved on. No one to blame but myself. They both ended up as great guys. One has a huge family and is a minister. The other only has 1 child and is a college professor. Both married nice people and are happy. They were really good guys in high school and ended up being really good adults. I've got both of them on Facebook and we keep in touch peripherally as we stayed friends over the years. I was a freshman and had a crush on a senior. To add to it, she was a cheerleader and her brother played quarterback for the football team and got a college scholarship. She showed up at a football game a couple years later with a baby in tow. She's married now and back in her hometown. That's about all I know. Back when I was younger and crushing hard, I got on AOL Instant Messenger and I had gotten my crush's screen name from a friend. I worked up the nerve to start a conversation with him, and soon after some awkward small talk, he sent me a message in Comic Sans, black background, red lettering, and in French. I then went to Google for translation and found out he had just called me a pig. In French! Being a seemingly awkward and chubby teenager, I was literally crushed. The heartbreak was only made worse by remembering that a few weeks prior, I had selected to take French class the next year and couldn't change it. Years later, now that I've blossomed, he follows me on every social media platform, has reached out a couple of times to try and flirt or hang out. Hard pass. I believed he's moved away and is a teacher now. Now you want me because I'm hot attempt. I had a lady try that post-college. Maybe had she not been so mean about turning me down when I asked her out before, I would have considered it. Overdosed and died last year. I got to see him before he was taken off life support with a really good mutual friend we shared. Organ donor too. It was surreal seeing him dwarfed by all those machines. He had one of the largest hearts I've ever come across. Went on to be a teenage model for hair products. Graduated from Yale, toured Europe, opened her own successful ceramics company that is sold worldwide and is often written up in magazines. Makes me feel like CRAP every time I think of her. There was a girl I really admired for a while. She didn't really give me the time of day after freshman year, though. She was a co-valedictorian and hugged me as I crossed the stage at graduation, and no one else got one. I'm still really confused about that 6 years later. She went on to med school and is either married or at least engaged to a guy she met there. Overall, she's doing really well, and I'm happy for her. I had several. One of them is still a close friend, and he became a primary care doctor. He also officiated my wedding. I have no idea what happened to another one. We didn't have overlapping friend groups, and she doesn't do social media. One of them is a math professor now, so that's pretty cool. My biggest crush in high school was my longtime neighbor, but it also fizzled out pretty quickly after we went to homecoming together. We're still good friends, and our families still keep in touch. He's also the guy who introduced me to my husband. I had 3, one from the first 2 years and 2 from the last 2. The first one is now female to male trans, who walked to Colorado to join a cult/commune. He is now in Arizona recording rap albums. The second girl moved to Florida and lives in a swamp. She periodically hits me up to tell me she misses me, how dumb I was that I didn't follow through, and that we should get married. The third was a missionary. She wasn't really into it once she grew up, came back home, and I introduced her to one of my closest friends. They've been married for 15 years. One of them is homeless and a druggie. It's very sad. The other one is famous in his home country, is a best-selling author, and is regularly on TV. Don't have a crush on him anymore, but I'm glad we are still friends, and I'm happy for how well he's done. I guess they balance one another out. She was aware then, over 30 years ago, but it was unrequited. We've been in contact through Facebook for the past several years, and once before that, my wife, at the time, and I had her and her husband over for dinner. From what I could tell, she's grown into a person I probably would have been happy with. It's nice to see my high school perspective got a few things right. I think we'd be good friends if we lived closer. She appears to be living a good life with her husband and family. With my second wife, I'm happier than I could have ever imagined. Life worked out well. She worked with the Obama administration, got married to some politician's son. She is happy, and that's the only thing that matters. Oh, she was also our school's valedictorian. She was so busy with her job, she could not organize our high school reunion, so that's a plus. I wasn't head over heels for her. I admired her, but I knew I wasn't for her. Then there's another crush of mine. We ran into each other years after graduation at the grocery store. After talking, I asked her out to dinner at my house. I pulled out all the stops. I bought rainbow trout fillets and made all the fixings. 6:30 rolls around. I open the door and, who the hell is this man behind her? Oh, this is my fiance, she tells me, or neglected to tell me about. Turns out they wanted to sell me on some multi-level marketing scam. She tried to cross the threshold. I put my arm out and asked them politely to leave. I turned away from the door and had my saddest meal I ever ate. If she's doing an MLM scam and working with methods like this, she's not only an a-hole, but a loser too. Congrats on not ending up with her. I had a few in high school. One ended up moving away after sophomore year and no one knew why. She reached out to me when I had a mental breakdown online and said that she could understand what I was going through. Some effed up stuff happened to her, though she never said what specifically. I didn't ask further because it wasn't my business to pry. I'm not sure how she is now. Another got super hot after high school and she did a degree in science. Again, not sure where she is now, but I think she'd be doing alright. And the third works at a bank. We ended up on bad terms, partially my fault. I found out she was making fun of me behind my back and had done so for months beforehand, so I sent her an angry message. Haven't seen her since then. The guy I crushed on for 2.5 years did not end up turning out great. I'm still friends with his younger sister, so I know that he recently acquired his 3rd DUI and his 2nd divorce. He's currently living in his friend's basement and occasionally works for his friend's moving company as a mover, but only when he feels like it. He spends all his money on booze and owes the 2 moms of his 5 kids tons of child support. But man, was he hot in high school. My second crush in high school is the only reason I got over my first crush. He's currently doing great, mostly because he gets to be married to me for 20 years. My crush turned into a self-righteous prick who still lives with his parents. He became livid when he found out my husband and I had a baby. I apparently was supposed to be his backup plan if he couldn't find anyone better. We split sophomore year, went our separate ways, but I still sporadically kept in touch as he prepared to go to Iraq. Years passed, he got divorced, and then my husband passed away in 2019 from a motorcycle accident. We reconnected and decided to hang out as friends. By the second date, we were inseparable. We live together and are incredibly happy. He's beyond supportive of my past grief that I still battle sometimes. He's a great provider and the most loving, selfless person I've known in a long time. I feel very lucky to have gotten a second chance with my high school crush. Turns out he's gay and got fired from a teaching job for having inappropriate relationships with his male students. They're all stunning and wildly successful. One in particular was a crush with a similar name to mine dating back from my elementary school, which turned out to be the longest crush, an entire decade, I've ever had, and still appearing in a looping dream sequence to this day, especially after that bitter, and frankly traumatic, rejection before we parted ways when I confessed to her. At that point, we were classmates for 5 years, and were going to different schools. After the separation, that's when the dreams began, and every time I woke up, I'm feeling emotional all over again. Took me another painful 5 years before I stopped crushing on her, but the dreams never stopped. Just last week, I had an update to the dream sequence where we actually talked for the first time in a decade of Groundhog Day levels of dreams. I know, it's pathetic. Life update on that particular crush. She's currently aspiring to be an architect and had an equally cool boyfriend, so I doubt she ever looked back on her past as much as I do. I recently tried to follow her on her socials to get a life update from herself, but she won't accept my requests, so I won't force her. First one has been married almost 25 years to a beautiful woman and has 2 beautiful children, but he's a serial cheater and I dodged a bullet. Second one owns the farm next to me. He's been married 15 years with a daughter, but he too constantly cheats on his wife. So again, dodged a bullet. Thank God I saw the pattern and broke the cycle. I've been married 18 years to a good man, and the only cheating we do is financial. Still not cool, I know. I'm right where I'm supposed to be. My fiancée admitted that during high school, she had this massive crush on me. Saw how well I did with kids. But she never worked up the courage to tell me. Had a few girlfriends, none of them lasted, and couldn't figure out if it was me or not. I called up my future fiancée one day out of the blue. We hadn't spoken in a year. I asked if she would like to hang out. She asked me for help with her studies that night. I don't know why I called her in the first place. I never realized how pretty she was until she walked down the stairs to greet me. She was in her PJs, but that didn't matter to me. I was suddenly giddy. A few days later, she starts scrolling through our contacts, asking if there's anyone on there I like. I told her yes, and she started pointing out every vaguely female-like name. Hers was at the very bottom because of her last name. When she gets there, she responds, "All that's left is my name." Yep, 1, 2... Oh, that's me? Well, shoot. That was 5 years ago. I honestly consider myself very lucky to be with her, with a number of things that had to go just right. My wife's former crush randomly messaged her on Facebook one day. She effed him on day 2. She's now my ex-wife. She's jobless, living with his mom, and I have kids. My kids are 5 and 3, so they don't understand it much, but I'm hoping for the long game when they realize which parent was really there for them. My son still says hurtful things at times, like, "I don't want to live with you anymore. I want to live with mommy," when he's angry. Kids do not understand, but believe me, when they get older and learn the truth, they will absolutely back you up. Stay strong. He died trying to save his friends. I'm sure he would have been a kind, righteous, responsible adult. I had this huge crush on him in high school, and he was good at everything. He volunteered, he was good in sports, he danced. Well, he was an overall great person. I think he had a crush on me too. And he used to do these small romantic things for me, but never had a chance to tell each other. Anyway, we lived in an area with several waterfalls and caves, and this group of boys loved exploring these. My crush was not a good swimmer, and he didn't go into the water that day. He was sitting on some rocks watching his friends have fun, along with another boy. His friends got sucked into a whirlpool, and this is what I never understood. Knowing he can't swim, he jumped in to save them. His other friend just watched. He didn't jump in. Of course, my crush couldn't make it out alive. I think they got the body after a few days. I always regretted not getting the chance to tell him how I felt, but I hope he knew in his mind. She went to college with her high school sweetheart. She gained 60 plus pounds. He left, and she became a teacher, who later was accused of sleeping with a student, so she left the ISD and went to another. Lost track after that. It appears I dodged a bullet. We got married. We both pursued other relationships thinking there was no chance. We were best friends and leaning on each other during rough times in our last relationships with other people when we finally admitted that attraction to one another. Been together 18 years now. She did really well for herself. Just recently retired, bought a nice house in our hometown after making a ton of money in a larger city. Married a dopey-looking dude and popped out a few kids. She seems happy, but when I talked to her last, I could tell that she just was the type of person that puts on the face for everyone else. Get a few drinks in her and she basically told me her life was a total waste, and if it wasn't for her kids, she would have sold everything and moved overseas. One ended up the pastor of a church with what seemed to be some views I don't entirely agree with. I haven't kept touch or kept track, so I'm not sure how far she takes those views. Her life just generally took a track mine wouldn't have meshed with. The other I dated in high school and multiple times after high school right up until I was almost 30. She's married with a kid now. She grew to be strong, smart, and creative. Really, we were dynamite together when things were good, but I don't know how much of the woman I loved remains now. I have no regrets about how it all turned out between us. I just sincerely hope her husband never has to deal with the emotional manipulation or outright physical abuse she used to throw my way when things got bad between us. I had two. One I'm married to, but the other is an interesting story. We now live 2.5 hours away from my hometown, and she and her husband live 3 blocks from us. We discovered this about 3 years ago while taking our kids on a walk and seeing them out in their driveway. My wife and her have reconnected since we discovered they lived so close, and they have actually been over to our house a few times. For the most part, it's been no big deal because it was so long ago, but at first, her husband was really trying to hang out with me or go play golf, which I thought was weird, all things considered. Then I found out he only knew we all went to high school together and didn't know I dated his wife for almost a year. I'm still not sure that he knows just how well I know her. Haha. Aside from that, she's turned out well. Stay-at-home mom who coaches cross-country, I think. Married my best friend, then divorced my best friend. Remarried my best friend. Now they're swingers and hardcore into BDSM. The day my best friend showed me the basement room with the sling and weird cross thing with wrist and ankle cuffs was interesting. He brags about crashing his car? Like it's literally his bio for all his social media. He also hit me up randomly with, "Hey, I'm stoned," and I replied, "Me too," which to then he said that he's usually horny when stoned. I would have taken up that offer so fast in high school, but now it made me want to vomit. Mine threw away a wrestling scholarship and dropped out of college after 1 year when he couldn't stay academically eligible. He was easy on the eyes, but not a lot going on upstairs. A few years after graduation, I ran into him and a bunch of people we graduated with at a bar in our hometown when I was home visiting my parents. His fiancée, now wife, threw up all over the bar bathroom, and despite the fact that I had met her roughly 20 minutes earlier, I was the only one who was willing to help her and keep her from drowning in a pool of her own vomit in the bathroom. It was kind of awkward given the history, but I wasn't going to let the girl die on the bathroom floor of a trashy pool hall. He didn't say thank you, and I basically carried her back to him after we got her cleaned up. They made a bunch of jokes about how he did the same thing a week earlier and she sat slumped in a bar stool until one of her friends showed up to take her home, and he went back to playing pool with his friends. I learned that apparently this is a standard Friday night for them. Back in high school, there was this girl who was hot. She was a cheerleader, really popular and beautiful. I was a typical shy nerd who never had a chance to get close to her. We actually did end up talking for a while when we were out on a high school ski trip. We both had to leave our respective hotel rooms because other people were busy there. We ended up hanging out for a while around the fireplace in the reception area. The next day, someone took a picture of the two of us where I had my arm around her waist. That picture ended up in the yearbook. Fast forward nearly 25 years. We connected via Facebook and I found out that she was living in New York City. My now wife and I were planning a trip to New York, so we managed to meet for dinner. My crush was still a great looking woman, but her personality was way off. We met up and went to a bar in the city, and meeting up with her boyfriend there. She treated him like dirt, acting like a typical little bee.